Welcome back to Great Northwest Weaponry. This is Thomas, and today we're doing our last video of 2024, Fud Lore Part 2. Now, if you missed Part 1, I'll post a link to that in this video description, and I'm also going to post a link to this video in the description for the original, as that video has kind of taken off in the last few months. We made Part 1 in September of 2023. Since September of 2024, so the last 3 months, that video has more than tripled in views. It was a little under 4,000 when this past September came around. So after the 1-year anniversary of the video, in the last 3 months, it has gotten almost 10,000. So again, more than tripled. And that was just at last check. By the time I post this video, it might have quadrupled in views. It is climbing rapidly and getting some traction. So thank you guys. Now, this is a controversial topic. Definitely had a wide range of opinions on the points that I discussed. In the first video, we mostly talked about revolvers, the Arisaka rifle, and the Colt Model 1911, of which there is a lot of misinformation spread about all three of those, or at least what I would call misinformation. People, again, argue a lot of this stuff to this day. If you don't know what a FUD is or what Fud Lore is, a FUD, usually an older gun enthusiast, and I say that in air quotes because a lot of times their support of the Second Amendment is very iffy, and they often spread a massive amount of information about old or new guns. I've seen them described as the type of person that would say, I support the Second Amendment, but, and then proceed to tell you what about the Second Amendment they do not support. Now, being an older gun collector does not make you a FUD. And being a FUD doesn't necessarily make you anti-2A. It can definitely be a bit of a gray area, and what I think is an interesting topic of conversation. And I, being a gun enthusiast, would like to dispel as much misinformation as I can, because a lot of it is either dangerous or just outdated information that has been very much proven wrong. Some of the best examples of what constitutes Fud Lore were at one time regarded as true, and the people still repeating them to this day are people who simply don't want to acknowledge that this is not a fact. And some examples that we'll be talking about today are hyper-specific to like a specific incident, I'm saying specific a lot also, that I experienced. Not necessarily something that would be widespread, but could fall under the broad umbrella of FUD behavior. Now, today we're mostly going to be talking about 22 shotguns and the Nambu pistol, as these three have, again, a lot of misinformation spread about them that could be caught under this Fud Lore umbrella. And if I get a little worked up through the course of the video, just know that a lot of this stuff very much frustrates me. So I beg your pardon in that regard. Also, I apologize. You can probably hear the sound of my heater running in the background, and that is not going to change because it is really freaking cold right now. So, diving into today's batch of Fud Lore. We're going to start talking about some interesting things that I've heard about the Nambu. What we've got here is a Type 14. This is an early war example. If my memory serves, this is a 1936 specifically. And these, again, have very much been victimized by misinformation spreading. Some of the most common things you'll hear is just generally how terrible they are and unreliable. Now, for me, some of this is partially true. The Type 14 can have problems, especially late war examples. But this early example that I have here, I actually outperformed my Walther P38 right here with my Nambu. And the Walther P38 is objectively a better pistol design. So a lot of that just comes down to the hands that the gun is being held in, more so than the gun itself. Now, again, late war Nambus are often pretty terrible, and as are late war Walther P38s, if I'm being honest. Now, the most ridiculous bit of Fud Lore that I've heard about the Nambu Type 14, and this was one that was a personal experience. I've never seen this anywhere else on the internet, but a older gun store owner, actually the guy who I bought this pistol from, had a few examples, and one of them was either chrome or nickel plated. It was shiny, and I don't know why it was exactly, but his explanation was that, oh, that indicates this is an officer's model. Now, This is something that I have seen many, many times where a gun store owner will very much push an idea that maybe they themselves hold. They have no way of proving whatsoever, and they'll just push it as absolute fact. The Japanese did not chrome or nickel plate their pistols. Period. Like, that's not something that they did at all. They didn't have the technology to do it at the time, and it was just not ever done. And furthermore, the officer's pistol argument, all pistols in the Japanese military could be considered officers' models. They issued them to officers, tankers, and pilots, and that's about it. They could be spread around to other military forces, depending on situations, but for the most part, the Empire of Japan, the Imperial Japanese Army, did not carry pistols. It was an officer thing. It was a sign of status more than anything. And this is also the case with most European nations in World War II. Also something that you will hear people argue about, like, all of the Germans, for instance, carried the Walther P38. No, they didn't. Maybe 30% of all Germans were armed with a pistol, and most of those, again, were under certain circumstances. So tankers, drivers, pilots, officers. Now, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the 22. This has always been a favorite of Fudd's for their interesting stories of what is and is not truth. Just got an old Remington sitting here, and I've got a little box of 22 ammo, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out an individual one to look at here. So 22, a tiny little caliber. If you don't know, it is a rimfire cartridge, and one of the most absurd claims that I hear about 22, that I hear often about 22, is that somehow magically, if you shoot someone particularly in the head with a 22, that it will bounce around inside their skull. Now, this is definitely a magic bullet theory going on here that just is false. So 22, it is a relatively quick moving projectile, especially for its teeny tiny little size, but it is, for one, not accurate very much, not particularly accurate at long range, if at all, and barely even lethal at long range, and it depends on the range, obviously, but it will, like any other bullet, either enter, mushroom, and stop, or pass clean through. I've heard circumstances of bullets hitting someone in the skull at an angle and traveling around their scalp, and this is something that does happen, not often. Again, this is a rare circumstance, but you can actually watch, I believe it was Demolition Ranch did videos on this, where he used PVC pipe and he bent it and would shoot into it, and the bullet will actually travel along the inside of the pipe. And something like that could happen under the skin, with a bullet traveling along the edge of your bone and not, following the exact pattern of travel that it would in a purely soft substance. But 22 is not going to ping pong around inside your head when it hits, or inside your rib cage. That is a myth. Now we're going to go over to shotguns. I don't actually own a shotgun right now. I have some shotgun shells here, but I have owned a few shotguns, and I would like to have some in the future. And what we've got here is just some birdshot. I'm very much mangling some of my words here, so I apologize for that. And I've heard interesting things about both birdshot and buckshot that definitely bear repeating, and a huge disclaimer that these are both bullcrap. First off, that birdshot is non-lethal to humans. Now, I will grant that it is less lethal to humans. It is not as likely to kill you, and it depends on shot placement and a lot of different circumstances. Birdshot is very tiny BBs, but there are many parts of the human body that, if shot with anything that breaks the skin, are very, very dangerous. You can kill a man with a pencil if you hit him in the right spot in the neck or the head. Now, the odds of birdshot breaking through your bones and hitting your vital organs are much lower, but if you, say, get shot in the face and a couple of those BBs rip your carotid artery, you're going to die. Same if you get hit in the inside of the leg and it tears apart your femoral artery. There's a lot of parts of the human body that bleed a lot when exposed to the air, and being shot with birdshot can and probably will expose some of those body parts to the air. It's not going to be your number one choice for self-defense, I would never use birdshot for self-defense. In fact, that's just a stupid idea. And I have to say, shotguns have to be the single most beloved gun of all Fuds, and it's hilarious. Again, just the list of common tropes associated with shotguns is unbelievable. Another example when it comes to buckshot. Double-aught buck is the same as being shot by a 9mm 9 times. No, it's just not. So buckshot, you've got, lead balls that are flying out of the barrel and creating a spread that is going to hit, more than one spot on any given target. And they're going to hit a lot harder than birdshot is and going to do a lot more damage. But an individual BB of buckshot is not going to do as much damage as a 9mm. You've got a jacketed bullet that is in a rifled barrel, and shotguns typically do have rifling, but when shooting buckshot, that doesn't matter as much because the bullets spread out. But even with that, there's myths regarding the spread of either buckshot or birdshot, regarding mostly when you cut the barrel of a shotgun. Of which, if you're going to do that, obviously do it within what is considered the legal length of a shotgun. But cutting the barrel on a shotgun is not going to give you a lethal spread at, 15 paces that is the width of an entire hallway, depending on the hallway, but you're not going to cover a room. It's not like you can march in with a sawed-off shotgun using double-aught buck and you're going to fire one shot and take out, 8 assailants. That's fanciful. You might wound a couple of them, but the odds of you killing any of them actually are relatively slim. If you cut the barrel that short, you are absolutely tanking the velocity of the projectile, of which is also a thing that kind of falls into stupid gun laws. You are making the shotgun ineffective if you cut it much below what is considered the legal length. You get to a point where you're taking the lethal effectiveness of the weapon and completely destroying it. That's why pistols with extremely short barrels are near useless. They're not going to be very accurate, and the velocity of the projectile is nerfed to near nothing. Furthering the shotgun discussion, one of my all-time favorites is that with a home intruder scenario, the intruder will be scared off by the sound of you racking a shotgun. Now, this is something that, again, is situational. There could be intruders that hear a from a shotgun and go, oh no, he's armed, we'd better go. But some home intruder scenarios are scarier than that. Some home intruders are there to do you harm. It's not a universal fix-all. Pumping a shotgun does not automatically scare someone off. A more cowardly home intruder that, maybe thought nobody was home and was going to come in and try and steal your TV and then sees an old man on the stairs with a shotgun, yeah, he's probably going to get scared off. If you have a group of 3 that are going to roll your house and don't care about hurting anybody, then you're probably going to get shot for taking the time to announce your presence. And this goes into another FUD argument that is a favorite of the internet. And again, in the original video that I did on this topic, I had a lot of comments from a number of people who said at the top of the comment, I am a FUD, here's why, and then would go on to elaborate. And in some of their cases, I just had to, retort with, no, I don't think you're a FUD, I think you just have a certain rationale that you go by, and I may or may not agree with it, but when you hear someone say that under no circumstances does anybody need large capacity magazines, Watch some Donut Operator. Just go and do yourself a favor and do that. And see how many attackers, or whatever word you want to use for them, assailants, take multiple gunshots before going down. Now, if you're going to rely 100% on your double-barreled shotgun, it might do okay for you, but having, 30 shots is going to serve you an awful lot better if you know that, well, there's a chance that the first couple shots won't do it, so you might need to keep going. And I'm not advocating that anybody shoot anybody here. That is an argument that I think is stupid in every sense of the word. I would love to live in a society where nobody ever gets shot under any circumstances. That would be absolutely ideal. Unfortunately, we don't live in that society. Nobody does. There is no perfect society. If you're going to pick a gun to defend yourself, don't intentionally nerf yourself counting on the fact that it might scare the person off. Odds are it won't. You should never rely on a maybe when you can have a, well, I know I definitely have 30 rounds, and the odds of 30 intruders breaking into your house is near non-existent. Or if you being in a situation where you have 30 attackers. Now, if you're thinking I'm going to get all this ammunition because I'm going to be the last man standing in the apocalypse, that's a little absurd. But again, circumstance makes all the difference in the world, and a lot of these stories are just laughable. And it can be fun to laugh at. I will give you that. I really found it hilarious when I had the guy trying to explain to me that a chrome-plated Nambu was chrome-plated because it was given to an officer. Because, again, if you look at any sort of historical record about how the Japanese dealt out their firearms, most Nambus were given to officers. The odds of this being in the hands of an officer or a pilot are much higher than the odds of it being in the hands of the average Imperial Japanese soldier. Now, again, I'm mostly making this video because I just find this stuff amusing. If you have more interesting Fud lore to drop in the comments, I've got enough different stories that I've heard, especially from the last video, especially since it's been taking off last couple of months, that I could do a whole series on this topic. I don't intend on doing hour-long videos ever, really. I try to keep my videos in the 20-minute or less range generally, because that's my attention span. If a video is much more than 20 minutes, I eventually kind of zone out, unless I'm, super fascinated in the topic at hand. But this is definitely something that we could revisit again sometime in the future. I hope you have all had a good 2024 and that 2025 will be even better. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. It's been Thomas with Great Northwest Weaponry, and I will see you next time.